class, welcome to grade 9 academic math. This is going to be lesson 1 of unit 1, which is review of grade 7 and 8 math. The learning goals for our lesson today are going to be as follows. It says, by the end of this lesson, I will be able to determine what an integer is and represent them on a number line. You'll be able to determine which integer is greater or less than another integer and compare their values. Determine the opposite of an integer. You'll be able to add, subtract, multiply, and divide different integers and determine why opposite operations are used and not what we call the crossing over or the bridge method. And you'll know how to simplify and multiply and divide fractions. So we're just going to start off with adding and subtracting. Before we start off, we're just going to ask ourselves, what is an integer, right? So what is it when we call something an integer and why do we use that term? An integer is a set of all whole numbers and their opposites. So for example, we have -5, +10, 24, -16. All of these are called integers. And the reason they're called integers is because they're whole numbers. These numbers are used to show direction above or below some 0 point, right? So if we wanted to represent integers on a number line, we would say, okay, here we have 0. And if we actually wanted to go in and represent those integers, all of our positive numbers would be on this side. And all of our negative numbers, and I'll just put that in orange, would be on this side. Each increasing as we go from left to right, right? So if we have right here some 0 value, right? If we're increasing our numbers, on this side we could put 10, right? On this side we could put 24. On the other side we could put -5 and then -16, because -16 is actually less than -5 because it's going in the opposite direction, right? 0 itself, an important note, 0 itself is neither positive nor negative. It's just a pivot point. It's just where the negatives and the positives start. Okay? It's just 0 is on its own. So let's try drawing out this line here. So we're going to draw actually draw out a line, our number line. So I'm just going to go in and draw it. So excuse how not straight my lines are sometimes, right? And I'm just going to go in and I'm going to say, all right, here's my 0 point. You just pick a point in the middle of that line somewhere and write in your 0 point. So that's my 0 point. I'm just going to fix that so it looks a little bit nicer. Right, so that's my 0 point. I know that if I'm going in this direction, my numbers are increasing. I know if I'm going in this direction, my numbers are decreasing. And that's just something for me to remember, because it's saying write them in order from least to greatest. So let's just go in and throw our numbers in. I'm going to start off with this -3, right? So I like to put in little dashes that are, in theory, evenly spaced from each other. Do your best. So I'm just going to do it like that. So -3 means to the left of 0 by 3 values. So I'm going to go from 0, I'm going to say, all right, 1, 2, 3, -3. Because it's less than 3, it's less than 0 by 3 values, or 3 points. Let's try putting in +5. +5 means greater than 0 by 5. So let's go in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's going to go there. Right? 0 is just 0, so we're going to leave it there. We know -6 is 6 less than 0, so I'm just going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to put it here, and it's 3 less than -3. Right? -2 is 1 more than -3. -5 is 1 more than -6. And then I know that 4 is 1 less than 5. And I can just go in and say, all right, I have all my points in. So now I can put them in order. So I have -6, -5, because I want least to greatest, -3, -2, 0, 4, 5. And I have my answer. So now let's go here. And it says for each pair of integers, circle the greater integer. So which one's actually larger? Is it -2 or 28? 28. Because -2 we know is below 0. So we know it's going to be over here on this side where it says decreasing, and then 28 will be on the other side. Here, so you can go in and try to do this on your own. Just come back and check your answers. So here we know it's 17. Here we know it's -15. Because in this situation, even though 15 is less than 30, -15, if I'm going to draw out this number line, -15 will be here and -30 will be over here, which means it's less than. So when you're on the other side, it's kind of like a mirror, right? When you're on the other side, things are opposite. And we know that -2 is greater for the same reason that -15 is greater. So I'm just going to write a little note for us here. We're going to write a little note. I'm just going to write, okay, the negative numbers, here, let's write it in orange. For negative numbers the closer to 0 is the larger value, right? So 15 is closer to 0. Okay. Now, it says state the opposite of the following integers. That just basically means you're multiplying by -1. Or it's the same distance from 0, in the opposite direction. Sorry, my writing's a little bit messy there. Right? So, if we are going to look at 5, or -5, let's just go in and draw a number line. It looks like that. Sorry, it's not straight. We have 0. So we know -5 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the left of 0. So now we just got to go 5 in the opposite direction. So let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so +5. So in that case, we know that the opposite of 20 is just -20. We just multiply it by -1. So let's add and subtract integers. When you're adding or subtracting integers, when you add, you move to the right. So if you are here, so you have 6, right, and you want to add 8 to 6, you're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I'm just going to extend my number line out here. I'm going to say, okay, this is 11, 12, 13, 14. So I know 6 plus 8 is 14. Now, and I'm going to do this in maybe red, if you're subtracting, you're actually moving to the left, right? Which means you're going to do, okay, I have 6 and I'm going to minus 8. So I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? So that's going to be -2. This is why 6 plus 8 and 6 minus 8 are two different things. And you also cannot do 8 minus 6. 8 minus 6 would give you 2. It doesn't mean the same thing. You can't move these numbers around. We don't have the liberty to do that. So if it says 6 minus 8, that is completely different from 8 minus 6. So that's a really, really important thing to remember, especially as we move on to collecting like terms. Okay, so here we have this. It says -3. So we know our starting point is -3. Plus means move left by 5. So let's do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my answer is positive 2. Right? Now we have negative 3. That's our starting point. This negative means move right by 5. So let's do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that is going to give me negative 8. And that's why it's important to remember how those numbers are multiplied and how they're subtracted as well. Okay? Now, the question becomes, what if the question has multiple signs? So in this situation, you have a negative here and you have a positive here. What do you do in these situations? Okay, there's a box of rules that we like to follow. So I put them all here, right? But basically, long story short, a positive plus a positive will give you a positive. A negative and a negative will give you a positive. If you have a positive and a negative, or a negative and a positive, you will get a negative. An easy way to remember this is to remember that when you have identical signs, so when you have the same sign, it's positive. When you have opposite signs, so if you have a positive and a negative, or a negative and a positive, it's a negative. Okay? So here we have a negative and a positive, so we leave it as a negative. It becomes negative 8. Here you have a negative and a negative, so what does this become? A positive. So you have 4 plus 6, and this becomes 10. Right? Then you have 4 plus negative 8. This is a positive, this is a negative. They're opposite signs, so it becomes a negative, right? So I'm going to say, right, this becomes 4 minus 8. 4 minus 8 is going to give me negative 4. Cool? All right, so try doing 8, 9, and 10 on your own. So pause the video here and then try to go through it by yourself, and then we can take it up together. So if you're back, you have a positive and a positive, a negative and a negative here. And I kind of gave that away. This turns to a positive 6, right? So then I have negative 5 plus 6, and that's going to give me positive 1. Let's try a few more. You have positive 5, so you just leave that alone. You have a positive and a negative here. Since they're opposite signs, we're going to change that to a negative 8. And then you have a positive and a positive, negative and a negative here. So we're going to change that. They're like signs, so change this to plus 1. So we have 5 minus 8 is going to give us negative 3. Plus 1 is going to give us negative 2. Again, becomes a little bit more complicated. We have a negative 2. We're just going to leave the negative 2 as is. Then we have a negative and a positive, and that's going to give us a positive. That's going to give us a negative because they're opposite signs. Negative. And then we have a negative and a negative, and that's going to give us a positive because they're the same sign. So then I have negative 2 minus 8, which is going to give me negative 10, plus 7, which is going to give me negative 3. And that's it. So now, when you're multiplying and dividing integers, it's the same idea, right? What you're going to do is for multiplying and dividing integers, if the signs are the same, the result is positive. So you have 5 times 5, positive and a positive, equals positive 25. If you have, say, negative 2 times negative 2, which like you have here, it's going to give us positive 4 because you had the same sign. So you're going to multiply the negative and it'll give us a positive. So if you have negative 6 multiplied by negative 30, these are the same signs, so it's going to give us positive 180. Okay. Now, if you have negative 5 and positive 5, notice how the signs are opposite. The signs are opposite, so the opposite will give us a negative. It's the same thing as when we are multiplying and when we are adding. So you have negative 5 times 5, which will give you negative 10. You have negative 2 times 2, which will give you negative 8. How about we try negative 7 times positive 8? That'll give us negative 56. There's also two different ways to show multiplication. There's actually three. So in this course, I'll actually rate it like this. 6.2 means the same thing as saying 6 times 2, which means the same thing as saying 6 bracket 2, right? And the reason that we say this, the reason it's the same is we're probably going to use this and this mostly in this course. We won't use this. And the reason we won't use this is this x looks too much like the variable x. And when we start to do algebra, it just gets messy. So I actually would say don't use this, like don't use the x. Okay, so we have 6 times 2, which will give us 12. 6 times 2 also gives us 12. How about negative 6 and 2? Negative and a positive gives us a negative. Negative and a positive, so we already know it's going to be negative, and then you're going to do 3 times 3, which will be 9. If the signs are the same, the product and the quotient is positive. If the signs are opposite, the product or the quotient is negative. Same thing applies for division. In this class, we're going to be largely using this way of writing division. We won't actually be doing this anymore. That is a grade 8 thing. We're just going to write stuff as over. But 6 divided by 2 is 3. 6 divided by 2 is also 3. So I'm going to have you try to do some of these on your own, and then we can take them up. So take them, try it on your own, and then come back and watch this video. All right, welcome back. So we're going to do negative 12 over 4, which is the same thing as saying negative 12 divided by negative 4. The negative and the negative will cancel each other out, and then you just have 12 divided by 4, which is 3. Now you have a positive 20 and a negative 5. They're opposite signs, so you're left with a negative. 20 divided by 5 is going to give me 4. So you're left with negative 4. So try doing some of these questions. I'm just going to take them up now, right? So you have a negative and a negative, so now I'm going to be left with a negative. 4 times 4 is 16, so I'm done. Negative and a negative, so I know I'm left with the positive because they cancel each other out. Then I have 5. 50 divided by 10, which is just going to be 5. I have a positive and a negative, so I know my answer is going to be negative, right? 7 times negative 3 is going to be negative 21. I have a negative and a negative, which will cancel out. 54 divided by 9 is just going to be positive 6. I have a negative and a negative. They'll cancel each other out. They're the same sign, so I have positive. 11 times 3 is 33. I have a negative and a 6 up here. This is a negative and a positive, so I'll be left with negative 30 over negative 10. Negative and a negative now will cancel each other out, and then I have 30 divided by 10, which is 3. I'll show you a really quick shortcut. This saves me a lot of time on a test. If you have a question like this, there's something called the butterfly method that you might have learned in elementary school, right? So normally how you would do this is when you're multiplying fractions, you're going to take the 3 and the 12 and you're going to multiply together, right? So let's just do that. Let's say, all right, we have 3 multiplied by 12. That's going to give me 36. Then I have 4 multiplied by 27. Ooh, that's a lot of work, 108. Now I need to go find the lowest common denominator and be like, oh my goodness, what's the lowest common denominator here? I don't even know. Let's try 30. Let's just try 36. So let's try 108 divided by 36 is going to give me 3, right? And then 36 divided by 36 is going to give me 1. So it's 1 over 3. See how I have to do a lot of work here? And I did that because it's an equivalent fraction. I just divided both the top and the bottom by 36. It's a lot of work for me. I don't like doing work. That's not how I was, I'm lazy. So what way you could do this is you could look at this like a butterfly. So let's say this is the first wing of this butterfly. I know that 12 and 4 can be divided by each other. So 4 divided by 4 is just going to give me 1. 12 divided by 4 is going to give me 3. I'm going to do the same thing for the other wing. 3 and 27, the lowest common denominator here is going to be 3. 27 divided by 3 is going to give me 9, right? And 3 divided by 3 is going to give me 1. Now, all of a sudden, I have this new number. I have 1 times 3, right? Just the two top numbers. 1 times 3, which is going to give me 3. And then 1 times 9, which is going to give me 9. And now this is way easier to simplify because I know I can just do 1 over 3. Divide this by 3, divide this by 3. I didn't really have to do a lot of thinking. I didn't have to do a lot of math, right? So this is a fun shortcut. We call this the butterfly method. I can also post another video. I'll show you how I do it and evaluate without a calculator for these next ones. We will go over dividing and multiplying fractions. I highly, highly recommend watching a video. I'll post one from Khan's Academy as well. I highly recommend watching a video on how to multiply and divide fractions. When I post it as well, please watch it. This seems to be the one thing that grade 9 suffers with. So please, please watch it. Please learn how to use this method. It's really, really helpful. Okay. So here we have, let's look at like our butterfly. So let's look at one wing. We have 7 and 49. So let's cross those out. I know 7 divided by 7 is just 1. 49 divided by 7 is just 7. Let's look at our other wing. We have 12 and 60. 12 divided by 12 is just 1. 60 divided by 12 is 5. 1 times 1 is going to give me 1. 5 times 7 is going to give me 35. So my answer is 1 over 35. Can't reduce that. Anybody remember the formula, or like the thing that the mnemonic I use when I talk about dividing fractions is you keep the first fraction, you change the sign, and flip. So I say keep, switch, flip, right? So let's keep the first fraction. We have 48 divided by 81. We're going to switch the sign and flip the second one. You're just going to put the bottom number on top and the top number on the bottom, right? And now we're just going to go multiply, right? We're going to use our butterfly method. So let's go with this one. I know if I have 81, I can divide it by 9, and 54 can be divided by 9. So I'm going to do 54 divided by 9 is going to be 6. 81 divided by 9 is going to be 9. I can actually divide that even further, right? Divide both by 3. So 6 divided by 3 is going to give me 2. Right, 9 divided by 3 is going to give me 3. So let's try it similarly on the other side, 48 and 400. So I think if you divide both by 16, it works. So 400 divided by 16 is, I believe, 25. 48 divided by 16 is, I believe, 3. Right, so now let's just take our top numbers. 3 times 2 is going to give me 6. 3 times 25 is going to give me 150. I can reduce this further in this situation. It wasn't just already reduced for me. So if I divide both by 2, I'm left with 3 over 75. And that's my answer. When you're solving problems, especially in grade 9 math, everything needs to be put in the lowest common, or the lowest multiple. So the most reduced fraction, which means that you can't divide it and you can't reduce it any further. Okay, thank you for listening.